everyone can see it. All right. Almost there. Here we go.
Can you go back one slide?
There we go.
Okay.
Yay.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is the beginning of our FOCO Business Success Series. We appreciate all of you that came out here today, those of you that are online, and we want to give a special thank you to Tracy Moon. Tracy, over the 4 years that I have been at the Chamber, has become a good friend. Tracy's really one of the best labor attorneys in the United States, and I heard that from a lot of people when Tracy started doing volunteer work. We're just blessed to have him in our community and have him willing to do things like this for the Chamber of Commerce. And so as we were putting this together, Tracy's actually done a few series for us last year as we were dealing with COVID and trying to figure out what was going on. And wanted to have Tracy back to do an event for us here. He did some things for us that it was, as we were moving through COVID, laws were changing, people were asking a lot of questions. Anyway, I asked him if he would, again, do this for, because, you know, a lot of things have changed, and business owners that are getting back to the grind hasn't really understood because there hasn't been a lot of information released as to how this may affect small businesses of any size. Anyway, we are, Joanne just walked in. We want to thank you, Joanne, for allowing us to be a digital edition today. This incredible facility. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to turn the floor over to Tracy, an attorney with Fisher & Phillips. Thank you, Tracy, for doing this for us.
Thanks, Todd. Welcome, everyone. This is the second presentation I've done live. I did a presentation down at Disney last week, and 1,000 people there. People want to get back out, want to get past COVID. Disney's not past COVID. I mean, they have very strict protocols with regard to mask wearing and everything else and social distancing. But what we're seeing, what I'm hearing across the country, is that people are pretty much fed up. And this announcement, the recommendations last week from the CDC, I'll touch on that a little bit today. But if you have any questions with regard to that, I spent about 14 hours yesterday on the phone with clients talking about how to proceed under this. You know, what are the different agencies going to do, like the EEOC, OSHA? What are the local and state OSHA agencies doing? Fed OSHA, state OSHA, and we don't know at this point. And I'll touch on a little bit of that as we go. Now, I want to go through some of this stuff. Like I want to talk about the American Rescue Plan. Most of you guys probably already know about that. I'm going to go through that quickly. I'm not going to touch on labor issues, union-related issues, because we just don't have that big an issue at this point in Forsyth County. If you're interested in that, you got questions, let me know. I did a presentation that included labor issues in a webinar about a month ago. So there's a number of things going on with quick elections and changes at the National Labor Relations Board and things like that that may be relevant to you. Let's see here.
I have to point at the computer.
Okay, American Rescue Plan. Maybe. Oh.
Multi-button toggle there.
Okay. It was signed by, we passed it, February 27th, passed the House of Representatives. It was $1.9 trillion latest COVID stimulus bill. That's a huge number, 1.9 billion. Okay. Signed by President on March 11th. It was sort of, it was timely because well, they were in a hurry because unemployment benefits were getting the current administration, one particular party, things like that for your kids and stuff like that. But they're hell bent on getting it done. Okay. They passed the bill in the House. It hasn't passed the Senate. But what President Biden did is sign an executive order forcing all federal contractors, 50 more employees, pay $15 an hour. Okay. Now, if you look at the information out there on this, the studies on this, most workers, full-time workers, even temporary staffing company like workers, make more than $15 an hour. Okay. And if you put this and you put benefits on top of that, you know, it's anywhere from 33 to 45 bucks an hour is what their wages are. It really hurts summer employment for college students and things like that. But that's what they're shooting for. They're going to keep trying because it sounds good to a lot of people. But if you're in business and you look at, I mean, it's basically basic economics, supply and demand. You can't afford it. Okay. Provides $20 billion to create a national COVID vaccination program. Anybody know what's going on with the vaccinations? Has it gone well? It's gone better than anybody ever expected it. Okay. And many people in Washington are not happy with that because this is one of the most powerful weapons they've had. Okay. To use to enact legislation that otherwise they may not have to. And I'm going to talk about paid family leave in just a minute, which is tied to that. Anybody know what they projected would be the availability of vaccines?
By July.
Well, it's far exceeded what they said was even possible. And the success rate of this program that they've done for vaccinations and for getting vaccines produced far exceeds what they expected. Now, everybody heard about what the CDC did last week with regard to recommendations. If you have offices in other areas, or let me ask you this, what's the vaccination rate in Georgia, the percentage of population in Georgia compared to other parts of the country right now?
26, 27%.
Is that how that compares? Is that higher or lower? Lower. Georgia does not have a low vaccination rate. Okay. If you have offices in other parts of the country and you're thinking about following the CDC's regs that apply, or recommendations, not regs, recommendations with regard to fully vaccinated individuals, you need to look at where you're at because you may have a very small percentage of your workforce that has actually been fully vaccinated. Georgia is a concern for that reason. Texas, parts of Texas is another area that's a concern for that reason. So if you're deciding on how you're going to proceed at this point, you may want to look at the fact that, you know, how many people have been vaccinated? There's such a supply of vaccines available now that I don't know if you know what's going on in the area here. You can call various nonprofits. You can call Northside Hospital for that matter, the Forsyth County Public Health Authority. They have groups, healthcare providers that will come out to your place, give vaccinations. As long as you have 10 or more people. Okay. And guess what? They're free. And the good thing about that, from an employer standpoint, is they handle everything. You don't get involved in the screening. You don't have the medical information on them or anything like that. Okay. Now, what do you need to know? You need to know whether they've been vaccinated or not. Okay. Or have some kind of some degree of reasonable certainty so you can make a determination on the policy you're going to implement based on the CDC's recommendations. Let's see here. Small business relief. I know the chamber's been heavily involved in this. If you need information on small business relief, how to apply for the program, you have all of that, is what I understand.
Yes.
Okay. So any of this information that you if you need a loan, if you have you know, if you fit within some of these criteria, you know, contact the chamber. They can help you in that regard. Includes $15 billion of targeted economic injury disaster loans. This is interesting because down here it talks about this shuttered revenue operators grant. You guys have been heavily involved in that with some local entities that have been closed down. okay? So all this is available, is a lot of money out there. The thing that's good about this is a grant. A grant is different than a loan. You have to pay back a grant, as long as you meet the criteria. Go ahead.
Just before, it's not a blanket to every business. That was the one that was that last summer. This last one was part of the, there was two, and you got it there. It was the, specifically for restaurants and bars, and then for shuttered venues. That was part of the last round.
Yeah, and in the first round, these entities were not addressed. And they were the ones that were hit probably the hardest of any industry. Now, I don't know how you guys are doing. The other thing it did was unemployment compensation benefits. 50 weeks to 74 weeks. Took it from $300 to $400. Anybody have any difficulty finding entry-level employees? Here, okay. And I'm shocked to see how many people can get by on this level of money, okay? The thing that I always see, we watch, I do a lot with construction companies and things like this. You get towards the end of projects, guess what? We're supposed to get a back injury. They want some kind of bridge compensation to the next job, okay? It's sort of the same thing. So we have to watch this. I think it's going to be hard to transition people off of this because, I mean, they've gotten used to it. And I cannot think of one company, one client that we deal with that is not having difficulty finding employees. Okay, and they pay well. The benefits are good. The training is excellent. You don't have that much interest. Okay, this third round of stimulus payments. Some of you may already received them. $1,400 per individual plus dependent. $1,400 for dependents, and there's a cap, $75,000 for a single, $150,000 for a married couple. This is interesting here, the COBRA benefits. The bill provides for 85% of COBRA premium subsidy through September of 2021. There's some technical things you got to look at to deal with this, but it's out there available to people who have been involuntarily terminated. What does involuntary terminated mean? Fired, not resign, involuntarily terminated. So don't, I ran into a situation a couple weeks ago where an employee knew about this. Employee knew that there were changes and things like that going on. We knew that she was looking for another job, but she did everything she could to get terminated. Okay, and this was the reason.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
What does that mean for the person that is terminated? We have two people in that situation. If they don't know about it, they can't.
No, they're eligible for this program.
Do they get notified, or do they have to know about this?
They got to know about this.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any notification requirement on employers. Okay, this is something that's out there. It's available. Give me your card. I'll check into that.
Okay.
Okay, and get back to you. But this program's available, and I do not know of any notice requirements on employers to tell employees.
And
Okay.
what is it? So what does it do compared to the pre this? I mean,
85% is paid.
by who?
Government, us. Us. We pay it. Okay, that's what it boils down to. It's all coming out of our pockets. Okay. Vaccination update. What happened last week with the CDC?
You don't have to wear a mask if you've been fully vaccinated, so they lowered the requirements.
Yeah, they've changed the requirement. Does it apply to only mask wearing?
Social distancing.
Social distance also, anything else? You don't have to quarantine somebody if they've been exposed to a person with COVID that's COVID positive. There's a lot more to it than what people thought, okay? Now, has it changed anything? With any of the government agencies, local agencies, state agencies. Doesn't change anything. Doesn't change anything. It's a recommendation. That's all it is. Now, does anybody remember when we were back last year, a couple months later than a year ago? You remember what people were saying about the CDC recommendations?
That there were requirements.
Well, they were saying the requirements, and the government loved it. Loved them. What do you hear the government now saying?
Mhm.
Do you hear anything? Now, do you think the government didn't know the CDC was going to do this? They knew well in advance what the CDC was going to do. Okay? What do government agencies do that really help employers? They give them guidance. Anybody seen any guidance out there? They knew this was coming. Have you seen any guidance? So what does that tell you? There's a potential issue here as far as government investigations go. What does OSHA do with regard to government investigations and this is safety? How are they dealing with COVID-19?
So now you have to report it even under OSHA 300.
Not yet. Not yet. That's what they want to do with the emergency temporary standard. Okay, they haven't done that. But here's the problem. Here, OSHA's been using the general duty clause. Okay, 5A1. General duty clause requires employers to provide employees a safe and healthy workplace free of recognized hazards that could cause fatality or serious injury or illness. That's pretty broad, isn't it? Now, does COVID-19 fall into that?
It does now.
No, it has. Okay. Anybody know what the maximum penalty, the top penalty that under the prior administration was issued by OSHA with regard to COVID-19? How much was the penalty? $28,000. Anybody remember what was going on during the campaign? The criticism of OSHA for that, and the need for an emergency temporary standard. They said it had to happen. They criticized the prior administration, OSHA, the prior administration, and it turned out that generally speaking, employers did one heck of a great job dealing with COVID-19. This came out of nowhere, and they followed the recommendations. They provided employees a safe and healthy workplace. Okay, so they were issued. There's a question with regard to what OSHA, EEOC, other government agencies are going to do in response to this CDC recommendations. Why haven't we heard anything from them? So we got these recommendations. Now, I find it hard to believe that the government, because there's so much conversation about, or so much discussion with regard to these CDC recommendations they issued last week, that why haven't we heard anything from the government on this? I suspect we do. And I've been talking to clients, can you hold off making changes? Because there's other issues associated with it. How do you determine legally whether somebody's actually been vaccinated or not? Okay. How do you want to deal with people that can't be vaccinated, either because of some kind of ADA issue, disability covered by the ADA, religious belief? And anybody know about the latest issue concerning the vaccines that's beginning to be discussed? Anybody know?
Blood clots.
No, well, blood clots, that's been there, okay? Because that's what the virus does. It's got those little spikes that goes through your blood vessels. And as it goes through, it scratches them. So you get, that's a natural, clotting is a natural body's reaction. Some people have problems with that clotting, okay? And their veins, whatever, close up. I'm not a doctor. Didn't stay in a Halloween Express from that.
Is it fertility?
What's that?
Their fertility.
Fertility. And what does that tie to? What type of discrimination?
Sex.
That's gender discrimination. So that's the latest. So be careful with that. And what segment of the population does that affect? Childbearing. Okay. So you may have somebody, you as HR or you as a manager, got to recognize that issue potential issue.
And if this is not the right place for questions, I can say this to the end.
No, go ahead. I'm happy to get questions.
All right, so this is something that's been on my mind. The president of one of the airlines basically said, no, he's for no one using their airline unless they've been vaccinated.
Yeah.
So the government last year, to push through this vaccine so fast, they basically gave they waived the liability for all the drug companies.
Well, it's emergency use authorization.
But if someone's telling me that I have to have a vaccination and I don't want it in order to use their service, do they not take the liability now of my health? And how does that affect HIPAA laws?
It wouldn't affect HIPAA, okay? If you have a business and that's, your problem is how you're going to determine somebody's vaccinated or not. This is an issue that's coming up with a lot of these entertainment venues. Give me some examples.
Verizon,
What's that?
Verizon Amphitheater,
The amphitheater,
the Brave Stadium.
Brave Stadium, but also these private entities. Main event, okay? What's the one? I can't think of the name of the one up there by Goodwill.
Stars and Strikes.
Stars and Strikes. Think about that, because they're in a catch-22 situation. What have employers got to do? They got to deal with their employees. They got to provide employees a safe and healthy workplace, right? Free of recognized hazards. Well, if you've been around any of those places, do you see customers wearing masks?
No.
Can't get them to do it, okay? They've had situations, and I can't talk about a specific entity or company, but there's been situations in the news that have talked about where they've had to call the police because there's been fights that break out, okay? But think about, you have to provide your employees a safe and healthy workplace.
What is so this doesn't involve HIPAA.
No.
What is the difference in, I can't ask someone if they were vaccinated for
Privacy and
MMR?
confidential, violation of right to privacy. And you got medical information, you have requirements to keep medical information, any medical information about someone absolutely confidential. That's why if you ask somebody to see their card, their vaccination card, you don't want to keep a copy of it, okay? Even if what some companies are doing is say, okay, let me see your vaccination card. Employees generally don't have any problem giving it to somebody, showing you, okay? You see the vaccination card, verify, you got to make a list, a confidential list. That list is essentially a medical record. You got to keep it absolutely confidential and private.
And we have to do this?
Oh, yeah.
We have to have this list now?
No, you don't have to have the list. It's up to you what you choose to do.
Okay.
I have clients that are saying, as of yesterday, we don't feel comfortable asking people for their, to see their vaccination cards. So we'll just go do it on an honor system. So, okay, I said, there's risk associated with that. You know, you may have a government agency come in and say, that's not sufficient. Okay, you haven't done your due diligence. You should have gotten a copy of the vaccination cards. Okay,
But there's no standard for that?
no, there's nothing out there.
So you're saying don't get a copy, but they're gonna want a copy?
Oh, yeah, they'll want to know what you did. So if you can say, it's like I-9s.
Right.
You look at the cards, you verify and you sign off that you reviewed them and they appear to be legitimate, okay? Same thing with the card. You see the card, you put them on a list, you've done your due diligence, you've shown your process, okay?
But I don't ask my employees if they're MMR vaccinated.
I know. See,
So-
that's what I'm saying. That's the issue. That's sort of the quandary that employers are in, okay? You know, can we ask?Uld we ask? You can ask, but what are you going to do if they say no? Well, they're going to have to wear masks. What if you got situations where employees not be vaccinated? Maybe because of an ADA issue, a medical issue, or fertility, okay? Excuse me. How are you going to handle those situations?
What's the answer?
There really isn't an answer. It's up to you what you feel is right for your workplace at this point.
So are there liability rules that are coming up, like, to protect companies, is a little bit of a limbo that we're in right now?
We're just gonna make it up as we go.
There's no guidance out there in that regard.
Right, there's what the state issued, right, like that temporary kind
Yeah.
of, but that's, I mean, that's. I don't
That
even know how
doesn't
affordable
protect you
that
from the
is.
federal government.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the issue that I'm talking about here. There's no guidance that will come down to tell you, this is what you can or can't do. And if you do it this way, you're legally protected from lawsuits. No, there isn't anything out there like that. That's the problem that employers are having. Okay. And then you got here in Georgia, as I already mentioned, and 26% or something of the population has been vaccinated. Okay. That's a low number compared to other parts of the country. They have so many vaccinations here now that they're doing everything they can to get them out. And it's important because vaccinations have a shelf life. Anybody know what Pfizer's shelf life is? It's like 5 days max. It has to be kept ultra cold. Like compared to Moderna, how long was the shelf life on Moderna vaccines? 28 days approximately. And it only has to be kept in a freezer. It's a little bit more manageable. That's why you see hospitals doing the Pfizer, because they have the capacity to keep things down towards absolute zero, so to speak. But that's an issue. There has been no government guidance yet on how you can proceed as to these CDC recommendations. Okay, so some clients I talked to said, we're going to maintain current processes and procedures with regard to taking temperatures, wearing masks. They're following the CDC's rules with regard to quarantine based on the CDC's current recommendation. If somebody says, hey, I've been fully vaccinated, then they don't have to quarantine if they've been exposed to a positive. But otherwise, they're in a holding pattern, trying to figure out what to do next, waiting for some guidance, some information. And they feel in many cases, if they're an office environment or don't deal largely with the public, that they can maintain that for a little bit longer. But if they're dealing with the public, restaurants, entertainment venues and things like that, they got an issue. Now I was talking to a couple clients yesterday that are in that industry, and they said, well, how would it be if we said, okay, all of our administrative staff will use, you're fully vaccinated, no problem, okay? You don't have to wear a mask. How about with regard to the people, are people that deal with customers, continue requiring them to wear masks? Now, what's the value of a mask? What does it do? What does it protect? Who does it protect?
Nowadays, it protects you and the other person.
Well,
They made that up as
Or
they
it was it protected the other person.
protects the other person. Well, OSHA hadn't changed their position on that. Okay. See, that's a misconception out there with a lot of people is, well, the masks protect me. No, the masks protect others. So you got to keep that in mind when you're going through and deciding how you're going to implement these new recommendations or if you're going to make any changes. Now, that goes back to what these entertainment venues that I've discussed this with and hospitality, companies in the hospitality industry. Look, we have concerns with our customers. Customers have concerns. We're going to continue requiring our employees that deal with customers, that customer interface, to wear masks, regardless of whether they've been fully vaccinated or not. Because you think about it, your customers don't know if somebody's been vaccinated or not. But then they got the employee problem, employees not wearing them. And you've got managers not enforcing the rules. So we're in this sort of quagmire. But hopefully we'll get some guidance here shortly that will give us something to base decisions on as we move forward.
Now,
Okay.
since it's guidance and not mandates, how is it going to protect anyone? Whichever avenue you choose.
Guidance is used by investigators and things like that. That's how they apply the rules. So it does provide you protection, okay? From government agencies, okay?
And I have a quick question too, because I am fully vaccinated, but on my card, and I don't know that most people know this, there is an expiration date, and the expiration date is August of this year.
Well, here's the issue that they have. They don't know at this point whether it's going to be like the flu vaccines where you have to get vaccinated every year. And are they going to put together, they're looking at this right now. Do they have to put together a vaccination that sort of does flu and COVID? Okay. They just don't know at this point. And they don't know the problem that the government agencies are dealing with. And the CDC recognizes this. Just because you got vaccinated doesn't mean that you don't get COVID-19. Anybody know what the success rate based on the current studies are of the vaccine against COVID? It's in the mid 70%, okay? The problem that you're dealing with is that I've been fully vaccinated. I could have COVID-19 right now. I could be a carrier, okay? You all could be carriers of COVID-19. It doesn't prevent you from being a carrier. It could be asymptomatic, okay? You have it, nobody knows. And that's been one of the problems with COVID-19 all along, is that somebody has it, they don't know it because it doesn't affect them. I mean, I had COVID, it's been almost a year ago, and I didn't have any idea. And the only reason I knew is because one of my buddies is a doctor. He goes, "Come on by, man. I'm going to see if you know what the test is like." And I said, "No, be interested." So I went by and got tested. He called me the next day, said, "Man, you won't believe this." I said, "Yeah." But I didn't know. I was out running, working out. I had no idea. It didn't bother me at all. Okay. So, there's a lot of issues out there. I just caution you, it's not an easy decision what to do.
So is there like a timeline, like by this date, we need to have, these rules in place, guidance or something with a little bit more teeth to in place? Because I mean, how do you operate like this?
And
That's the problem.
without guidelines, is EEOC and OSHA actually trying to enforce things or not?
We don't know what they're going to do.
Is it applicable even? Because I mean, are these rules even applicable in this environment? I mean, could you argue that, under normal circumstances, sure, but if there's a global pandemic and there's like all are these things still applicable?
Well, and one issue I know about, and it depends on how much research an employee does, because if they go on Google, they'll read that OSHA has stated that they will go out to the job sites or whatever if they get a complaint.
Yeah, and that's so.
Yeah, well, here's the way OSHA's
Based
work.
on what?
Based on, yeah.
OSHA hasn't been going out to job sites until recently. They've been doing what they call rapid response inquiries. You guys ever heard that? Rapid response inquiry is they send you a letter. Some employee made this complaint. I've done hundreds of them since I'm on COVID-19. And they say, and you got to do a self-audit and report. Okay? Got to be careful now, because if you're doing it and you're reporting, what you say can be used against you. Okay? It's an admission against interest. I do them, it doesn't have the same legal consequences. But they've been doing rapid response inquiries. Now, and one of the reasons they do that is because they don't want to expose their investigators to the virus. Okay? Now, OSHA's issued citations during the pandemic under the General Duty Clause, which I already mentioned, PPE, violations of PPE, personal protective equipment. And the other one's respiratory protection. Okay? So if you're requiring somebody to wear respirators, there's certain training, there's that involved, there's fit tests, make sure that they're medically able to use a respirator. There's certain criteria that you have to fill or to meet. Is a surgical mask, N95 mask, is that considered a respirator by OSHA? No. Okay, that's a misconception. But what you see, and this is historically true also, most OSHA investigations are triggered by an employee complaint. Now, what we're seeing also during COVID, not anywhere, it's not regular, It has happened, where you've got customers who have made reports to OSHA. Okay? That there's a safe, unsafe environment. Now, OSHA comes in and looks at it. They're not looking particularly from the customer's point of view. They're looking at it from the employee protection point of view. Now, you think about this. You're not requiring people to wear masks anymore, you know, because you think they're fully vaccinated or whatever. OSHA hadn't taken a position on this. You still be creating still a hazard there. And as I talked a minute ago about, you could be carrying COVID-19. You could be carrying COVID-19. Scott could be. Okay, any of us could be. Okay, so as you see, you're sort of in a catch-22 situation. Okay, I talked to two CEOs yesterday, and I've been talking to them. I've known them for years. They're fed up, like most people, with the mask wearing. Okay, they're going out. They're seeing all this going on, and they think it was overdone to begin with. And they just said, we're just not wearing masks anymore. They're not checking to see if they're fully vaccinated. That's what I think they're going to do. And I don't know for sure yet, but I think that's what they're going to do. And these are large entities. Anybody know what Walmart's doing? Costco, Target?
Like making it a forever rule?
No, they're relaxing the rules.
Costco?
Yep.
Publix just did, Publix did too.
Yeah, Publix is another
No
one.
mask?
No, not at all, not even for like.
They highly recommend it. They've got signs that say recommend, but it's no longer mask required.
Yeah, and so, you know, you'll see, because of that, other employers are saying, well, if they're doing it, then it's okay for us to do it. And then I was talking to a HR professional yesterday, and he said, hey, they got deep pockets. They can defend against these things, okay? And, you know, they have a lot of customer interaction, okay? But I haven't been in any of those places. Are the employees wearing masks?
And I went to Publix yesterday. Some employees are, some are not. So I don't
Okay.
think they're even requiring it. I don't know that they're not asking the employees if you're fully
Yeah.
vaccinated, you don't have to wear one. Or I don't know that, but there are
Yeah,
some
see,
employees.
that's
I
probably
think
what's going on.
I think it depends on the region, because North Forsyth is one thing, and then I went to the Windward Walmart yesterday, and I swear I was the only one without a mask.
Yeah. I mean, I go travel all over the country, and this area right here, people wear less masks than any place I've been, except for Dallas,
Texas.
Texas, Dallas. Okay, and guess where the areas are? I was looking, talking to a client in north of Dallas yesterday, and I said, you know, we're trying to figure out she's trying to figure out what she's going to do or recommend. And I said, what is your rate? Vaccination rate? They're lower than we are. Okay, so that's an issue. Now, by the way, and we sort of gotten off, but it doesn't make any difference. But companies are looking at ways to increase the number of people that are vaccinated in their workplace. Okay, they're setting up programs like I mentioned earlier. You can get a company to come out free, nonprofit. Georgia Highlands is doing it. I think the library is sponsoring. Forsyth Library is sponsoring shots. So have them come out. Now, the good thing is, what they're doing is they say, okay, if you're interested in getting the vaccine, here's sign-up sheets. So they can make a determination if they have 10. They're letting their family members come in, okay? Now, they don't get involved in it. It's all handled by the healthcare provider. But they have a reasonably good idea that somebody got a shot, okay?
You only have to have a reasonably good idea.
Don't know.
We don't know.
Don't know. But they feel more comfortable that, hey, the most of my workforce or all of my workforce, one company up near downtown has done it. And they have everybody but one person that's been vaccinated. Okay, they know that's for a fact. They have maybe 35 employees. But that one person is not protected by any of the discrimination angles or anything like that. She is unsure about the safety of the vaccination. Still unsure. Okay, so what they're doing with her is they're getting her information. relevant to the issues, the concerns she has. They're engaged in a discussion with her. And they're watching very closely for retaliation. Whistleblower, retaliation type things. You got to, if an individual decides not going to get vaccinated, it's their choice. If it's because of the ADA or Title VII, it's protected, okay? So you have an obligation as employer to prevent retaliation, not only by supervisors, but by coworkers. And that's been an issue that we've seen. And you think about the fact that now people that are fully vaccinated don't have to wear masks. So if you got a workplace, you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. If you haven't been fully vaccinated, you got to wear a mask. Everybody knows who's been vaccinated or not. Does that increase the possibility of retaliation? Hey, look, that person ain't got a mask. And they ostracize them, okay? Or you got a manager that's like take some kind of adverse employment action against them. So you got to be aware of these kind of things that are out there. In general, retaliation claims are more difficult to defend and get dismissed because it has a lower burden of proof, okay? If you're in a court. So you got to remember that. I can get rid of discrimination cases, give them dismissed on summary judgment. We still got the retaliation claims sitting there. Okay? So that's why I tell HR professionals, etc. I said, look, you got to make sure your managers understand that risk. It's just not the protected categories and things like that. They have to understand the consequences and the effects of the retaliation. They got to prevent it. They got to take positive steps. Okay, update. We talked about this. The ADA reasonable accommodation. You got to make a reasonable accommodation for someone that cannot get a vaccination. What are some of the reasonable accommodations? Well, they could be anything. I protect them. Okay.
I have a question, sorry. So would you recommend that you almost bring everybody together to kind of level set, like here's, and then have everybody sign, hey, I heard this, kind of like the employee manual type of thing?
Yeah.
And just to document that they understand kind of the dynamics. I don't know, what do you recommend?
Training and put employees on notice of what your policies are is wonderful. It's a great idea. Remember this, though. Managers need different information than employees, okay? Because they're held to a different standard. They have different job responsibilities and things like that. So you can do general type training, but managers need some additional information, okay? But that's a good practice to meet with your employees, tell them exactly what the ground rules are, and importantly, give them an opportunity to ask questions. Now, that's one of the issues that we see from time to time in cases. Companies have gone to electronic training. And I just saw it last week with an OSHA matter. The training, hazard communication training was done electronically. And I knew what was coming. I mean, I knew the investigator and I knew where he was going with it. The individual employee, and he found out through interviews of employees that, well, I had questions, but I didn't have an opportunity to ask questions. Okay? So the training's deficient. So remember, give them an opportunity to give them feedback. If they're doing it electronically, what do a lot of people do when they take something electronically? Like pencil whipping it. Okay, they just go through it. They don't really pay attention. That's why when I do presentations and it's SHRM or HRCI or something like that approved, I put the information they actually suggested strongly that I don't give them the code right up front, the continuation code. I put it in the presentation somewhere, so they're forced to listen, or at least appear to be listening.
Tracy, quick question if you don't mind. What's with employees who refuse to go on business travel because of concern of COVID? What's the legal situation where we look at business travel in the US and outside of the US?
Okay, you have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. You gotta look at the particular employee and you gotta look at the particular trip. Okay, and after you've analyzed those issues, you may need to it may not be a legal issue involved. After you analyze those issues, there is no legal issue here. This employee doesn't have a legally recognized reason or protection for not going. But be careful with that. It often is more than just the employee that you got to look at. Maybe the employee's family. I've had that situation come up where the particular employee had a child who had an immune deficiency disorder and had a concern. It was a legitimate concern, okay? They wouldn't have known that unless they continued to ask the employee questions. And what they did, and you guys have heard this, they engaged in an interactive process with the employee. You know, what can we do? All right. See, it may be you don't have to take the business travel. We can do a conference call. Maybe just is there an accommodation that can be close to being effective or as effective? Okay. But be careful with blanket policies. Generally, they'll work. But there are always exceptions. And that's the problem with COVID-19. There's exceptions. And unless you engage and ask questions and get additional information, you don't know if it falls within one of the exceptions. Okay?
Back to the electronic training
Yeah.
with the safety. So the one that said that he had questions but had no opportunity to ask. So what do we do in that regard?
Here's what we're doing. And as a matter of fact, we're working on it right now. We're going to have, where they're working with their IT people right now, where there's a message box that pops up, like a message box, where they can ask questions. It's there, okay? So they have an opportunity to ask questions. It's like a chat. And what they're going to do is have a safety professional, someone in the safety department, who's going to address those questions, okay? The problem that they have is some of these employees were doing the training at odd hours, middle of the night. Well, they have to deal with that, and they're figuring through that. But I'm talking with the compliance officer, the OSHA investigator right now, saying, look, you know, that's a way for the future. Okay, would this suffice? And he's like, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. But the other important aspect of this, whenever you're doing your training or under any type of training, HR training, safety training, any type of training, you want to get feedback on that training and see if it's addressing the subject that you're trying to address. Is it sufficient? And remember also, and you're going to see more of this as we go forward under the new administration, you make sure that you provide the training in every language possible. Okay? If someone can't comprehend, and I got one client right now that has 2 employees that are, I guess, Eastern European. It's a manufacturing setting. And what they did is they asked me what, and they speak English, but they don't read English, and they don't really, I mean, you can tell that they try to act like they're good employees. They try to act like they know, but they don't, okay? And so what they did is once they realized this, they went to a church where these people go, okay, where these individuals go. And they talked to the pastor, and the pastor suggested some way they could come and translate it. And they did this training for them, which I thought was pretty smart. They were looking at the cost of having to bring translators in for just this particular situation, translate everything, but they went to the church and found it. Okay, which I thought, again, was pretty good. Let's see here. Okay, if you have one of the issues are incentives. Employers are offering employees incentives to get the vaccinations. Okay, all kinds of incentives. Paid time off works well. You go get the vaccination, but be careful with paid time off, because what is happening to some people with the shot, especially the second shot?
They see that the federal authorities are recommending that they still get that up to 10 days.
What if they've already taken their 80 hours of paid time?
Well, see,
Again?
that's the issue. I mean, see, that's when you're coming up with incentive. You got to think about these things.
Right.
You know, I mean, see, that's a problem. Anybody know what the school system did when they had all the teachers, all for teachers?
Yeah, they sent the kids home for a day
Yeah,
randomly.
they had it on Saturday and they were closed on Monday, okay, which I thought was a way to do it, okay, because you don't know. When I got the first shot, I was like, my shoulder hurts. When I got the second shot, I had nothing. It didn't affect me at all. Now, my wife, she got the first shot, it was nothing. She got the second shot, she was down for a day and a half, okay? So everybody's different. So you got to take that into consideration. You know, if you offer an incentive, let's say a monetary incentive, and you got somebody that can't take the shot, or is a conscientious objector, it could be discriminatory because you're not allowing them access to the incentive. So you use substitutes, okay? Okay, you don't want to get the shot, you can't get it because of medical condition or religious beliefs or childbearing, gender related. Offer alternatives so they get incentives. They can earn the incentive. Okay, incentives available to them. Okay, religious is different. It's difficult because how do you know whether somebody has a sincerely held religious belief? Very
Isn't it
difficult.
discriminatory to try to find out if they do?
Well, I mean,
I mean, right. Because I feel like I'm discriminating if I'm trying to push you to figure out if your thing is religious.
well, I mean, it's difficult. There's no one size fit all solution to that. Okay, it's a case by case basis. I'll give you an answer. I'll give you an example. I've had this happen a number of times. I'll use industrial auto dealerships. Auto dealerships, their service departments open on Saturdays, right? They need service techs. We got a service tech that says, hey, what religion meets on Saturday?
The Jewish.
Well, what other?
Well, the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Seven-day Adventist, yeah. So yeah, the guy comes and says, I can't work on Saturdays because I'm a seven-day Adventist. Wow. Okay. And they said, oh, well, we'll look into it. Okay. And all the other service, because they are on a rotating schedule, service techs are, and this happened more once, upset. Pick my language up. They're upset. And they're like, God, this guy, they're taking advantage of us. What they found out, and this from employees, coworkers, he's fishing. He's not a seven-day Adventist. That's just BS. And
But
guess
what
what?
if he is a 7-day Adventist, but he chose to go fishing instead?
Well, he doesn't need the accommodation.
Okay.
Okay. So
what happened?
Um,
They can force him to work on Saturdays?
no, they fired
Or he
him.
got fired?
He got fired.
Okay.
Well, I haven't had it more than once. That was a ruse. You know, in the HR field, you'll get these people come up with something, and now all of a sudden everybody does it, and then employers catch on and they go to something else. Sort of like that's what that was. Okay. Again, be careful with gender now. Oh, by the way, I was last week when I was presenting down at Disney. One of the presenters was a guy who huge healthcare provider nationwide, and he's in charge of COVID. He's an immunologist, he's a medical doctor, all kinds of things. PhD, I mean, he's all over the place. He said the best source for information on this subject, childbearing, is at WebMD. He said right now. He said there's no study done on it. He said the problem is that the virus. Everybody seen a photo of the virus? It's got a bunch of spikes, and that's what's causing the clotting, scrapes of the blood vessel. He said that something in the female reproductive process, the eggs or whatever. Guess what? Spikes. Okay, so they're concerned that your immune system could attack it. Okay, because it resembles the virus. That's sort of non-medical terminology or example. That's the way I understood it when he was talking. Okay, another thing he said, and this goes to the asymptomatic issue, and this is interesting. As of a couple weeks ago, 77 million vaccinations have been given. Out of those 77 million, there were 5,800 cases, only 5,800 cases of people getting COVID-19 after being vaccinated. Okay. Now, That included fatalities and illnesses. Okay. Now he said, that's interesting because it's such a small number. So it shows that the vaccinations are more successful than or a higher percentage of, higher rate of percentage rate of success. But when I talked to him a little further, I said, what about the testing issue? How do you know if people are, the type of test? Because you do the self-tests at work, the accuracy rate on them. Read the CDC on that, or CDC, and that's one of the reasons the CDC is was hesitant to make changes in the recommendations. But he said, that's an important point, because what they did is those are cases that are showing up at hospitals and medical care, healthcare providers, and they're doing the best test available. So they know. So there probably is a higher rate of people getting COVID. They don't get tested. They don't go in. They don't know it. Okay. So that's another issue. Okay. Let's see here. I got this chart here. By the way, if you want this presentation, let me know. Let Scott know, and I'll send it to you. I can send it to you in PDF format because it gets through your firewalls. It's not as large. But this gives you an idea of what the risks are associated with the different incentives, and I've already sort of gone over that. But be careful, if it's a monetary incentive, if you got non-exempt employees who are working overtime, it may affect their regular rate of pay. So be careful how you classify the incentive, okay? That's an issue that people miss. It's the overtime rate, 1.5 is on all the compensation earned. Okay, and the incentive is additional compensation. And there's ways you can structure it to minimize that risk. If you need information on that, let me know and I'll send it over to you. Okay, let's see here. Final thoughts. This is the key here. Just because an employee's been vaccinated, there is no automatic exemption from masking and social distancing. There's no automatic. Okay, that's a recommendation at this point. All right, I got clients asking me, so, well, can we stop taking employees' temperatures? What does OSHA say? You got to provide employees a safe and healthy workplace. Okay. So there's a lot of things out there that go into making these decisions. Let's see
So
here.
federal government, OSHA, CDC, EEOC, who else should we get their recommendations from?
Well, see, the CDC's
I'm just
recommendations,
ADA.
OSHA, the EEOC, there's the whole alphabet soup
Right.
of government agencies. They may not issue or change regulations. They may issue guidance. And as I mentioned earlier, the guidance is useful because it directs investigators on how to deal with the situation.
But they're also not all the same.
Exactly
We're
right.
all gonna say something different,
Say
and someone
something
else is
different.
gonna
They don't fit together.
investigate.
They all got different viewpoints, and that's why, and it's interesting because clients that are in states that don't have Fed OSHA, or they have state discrimination laws, they got to comply with both federal law and state law. And you as an employer got to comply with state, local, and federal. Okay. One does not provide a safe harbor for the other. You got to comply with all of them. And we run into situations frequently where you can't comply with everyone. There's one, you got to pick the one that provides that's the least risk in your particular situation. Okay. Well, we're starting to run long here. I just want to touch on a couple issues here, and then I'll finish up. Any of y'all have employment arbitration? Employment arbitration is something that has been useful to employers for years. It's a private hearing on employment claims. It's private, it's not out there in the public. And the real value to employers has been a class action waiver that goes in, that's included in them. And what that means is you can't bring a lawsuit as a class, you got to bring it individually, which eliminates a huge legal risk for employers. Well, guess who hates that? Plaintiffs' attorneys hate it. Okay? And who do the plaintiffs' attorneys give money to? A lot of money to. current administration, okay? They want to change that. And the argument that they made is that under National Labor Relations Act, Section 7 protects concerted activity. Employees get together talking about terms and conditions of employment. That's why you can't prohibit employees discussing salary anymore. That's what it's based on, Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act. They're saying that that violates Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act. There is something on the National Arbitration Act, federal law, which says that arbitration, employment arbitration, and it applies to businesses also, arbitration in the business context. And that's what the Supreme Court has used to say employment arbitration is still lawful. But they want to enact a law which takes that off the table. Okay. Okay. Pay equity. This is situations that's out there again. It was under the prior two administrations ago, a big issue. It's the gender pay gap. Okay. The problem is additional reporting requirements for employers. Okay. Changing the EEO-1 requirements. Adding another component 2 which provides additional information to the government so that they can use it to determine whether your pay is equal as far as gender. It also prohibits, the law that they're talking about prohibits asking information on compensation. Okay, you don't want application of employment that says how much will you make. That's why can't ask that information. Okay, so there's a whole criteria. I won't get into that. One other thing I want to talk about. If you haven't done it already, the Equity Act makes it law with regard to gender identity and sexual preferences, sexual orientation, things like that. The Supreme Court already said basically that last year, so most of you probably already amended your documentation, your employee handbook, stuff like that. The thing about the Equity Act also is that the defense that it's your religious, based on your religious beliefs, is no longer will be taken away as a defense. Okay, so that's a potential issue. Okay, okay. Joint employer. If you have employees, for example, now under the law, you could be liable for direct control over them. Under the prior 2 administrations ago, they changed it so that you could exercise indirect control and still be liable. So you could have you could be a staffing company, and you send employees over to this company. You don't have any further contact with them. Okay, you pay them. You make sure that they get benefits. You track their hours of work or whatever for compensation purposes or whatever. You perform limited functions. That's indirect control. You could be liable. So you could get sued for discrimination, even though you know no direct interaction. There's also, be careful with independent contractors, subcontractors. You got a lot of people that use, they call them 1099 employees. 2 administrations ago, they were, that was a problem, okay? That's going to be an issue again, okay? So be aware of that. If you're using subcontractors, independent contractors, you're paying them, and it doesn't make any difference if that's what the employee wants to be classified as. Doesn't make any difference. It's your duty to properly classify them as employees, okay? If they are employees. And the government will most likely take a broad view of that. in the sense of prohibiting it. So be careful with that. I got a client right now that has about 40 employees. They're all subcontractors. They do a certain type of construction work. And he says, if I change the employees, they're all gone. And I said, well, another thing is, you change them to employees, you got to run them through the I-9 process. They're probably not documenting them lawful workers. He goes, yeah, that's the other problem I got. Okay. So, be aware of that. I know I got to finish up here.
I was gonna say, can you do like a whole day class on this?
Yeah, I mean,
Not
yeah,
today, but another.
yeah, I do that. Matter of fact, I'm doing that for a client next week, where we're going through and dealing with managers and some of the deficiencies that they've noted with regard to their management skills, which are essentially non-existent. But they have a lot of employees that are managers or have been promoted to managers because they've just been there the longest time. Okay. It's like hiring an employee. One of the things that's very important to them is to start off on the right foot, obviously. But you got to somebody's got to tell the employee, sit down and tell the employee what's expected of them. Okay? These are your job responsibilities. This is what we expect. Job duties, job performance, you have questions, all that. If you don't, and most managers don't do that. They get a new employee, they throw them right out there. Okay? And what does an employee do? You may have a great employee. The employee's looking around, wants to be successful, and so he's watching Joe over here. Well, Joe's got one foot out the door because he's the worst performer you got. But the guy who's new and hired doesn't know that. Okay? So remember things like that, how to discipline employees, just the basics. They don't even know the basics. So.
And can I just ask a quick question? This is a right to work state. So like what's the protection within that?
Okay.
Is that a long
Well,
answer?
no. There's a difference between right to work and at-will employment. You're talking about at-will employment. Okay. At-will employment means you can terminate somebody or take an adverse employment action at any time for any reason, so long as it's not an unlawful reason. And that's where you get into the lawsuits. Right to work has to do with unions and things like that. Okay. Right to organize, and not joining unions, things like that. Okay. Any other questions? Any questions from the, if anybody's on there?
No one has asked a question, but we'll give them about 30 seconds. If somebody wants to type a question in the chat, we'll honor
I
that.
got a copy of
Oh,
that.
yeah, I'll get it to you.
And can you let me know about that
The
Cobra.
The
Cobra notice?
information, Cobra notice. I don't know of a change with the Cobra notice. Do you do the Cobra notice yourself, or do you have the third party?
Our third party does it, but
I would ask the question to them. Okay, that would be the best, because they're the ones that are interacting, sending out the Cobra notices. That would be where I'd ask first. Okay, because they would know exactly what's required. Okay. In closing, if you have any questions, well, it's gone. Let me know. You can send me an email. You can call my cell anytime. I pick up the phone. I practice all over the country, so I'll get a call 2 in the morning from California. Okay, things like that. I don't care. It doesn't bother me.
do you have a card?
You have your.
I have to.
Or it's on the
It's
PowerPoint?
on the PowerPoint, but I'll send you a copy of the PowerPoint. If you guys want, just drop me an email, let Scott know, or Scott has it.
I'll send it out through the registration.
Yeah, we probably want to send it to the PDF though.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is, and it's sort of like what you were having, when you were exchanging emails earlier, the size of it sometimes won't get through firewalls, okay? Or it won't transmit, it just sit there and never was sent. So I'll send it in PDFs, and if you want the PowerPoint, let me know. But thank you very much.
Thank you,
Tracy.
Tracy. Thank you.
A lot of information. Really, that was a good question. There's a lot more than we could pack into an hour, but Tracy's one of the best, so thank you. We're, and we will maybe,
Do a full day.
we may do some more of these, given the success, but we're trying to do, based off of the the success of the webinars and things that we had last year, we were having as many as 200 or 300 people participate.
Wow.
And so as we're coming back to the new norm, we want to continue doing that, giving value to not just our members, but to the community in general, just to make us a healthy, strong workplace. Our next series, or the next feature in the series, is actually about if you want to get your business ready to for an investor or to go see a bank, how do you get your business healthy? The books, the things that you need to do to talk to someone when you're raising money. So hope that you can come back for that. We will start promoting that probably this afternoon. Joanne, would you like to say anything? Welcome everybody.
Well, I just wanted to say welcome to Digital Ignition. If you have not been here before, we are a co-working and tech incubator that also serves as a venue. So if you need a place to work, if you know somebody else that is looking for kind of a temporary place to work, or if you need a particular venue, please give me a call. But we're also the official incubator for Forsyth County, so we're delighted to work so closely with the chamber and county, and we're here to make it a success for everyone, for all businesses.
Great. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanna, can I get your card?